I remember the smell first. Antiseptic. Cold metal. Something faintly sweet trying to hide the scent of fear. Hospitals always feel like time is being held hostage. The lights hum. Shoes squeak against polished floors. Machines breathe for people who can't. I sat beside my brother's bed and listened to the slow rhythm of the heart monitor. Beep. Pause. Beep. Pause. Every sound felt like a fragile promise that could break without warning. Outside the window, rain dragged gray lines across the glass. I hadn't slept in 2 days. The accident had happened so suddenly that my mind still refused to believe it was real. One moment we were arguing about nothing important, the next moment a phone call split the world open. Truck collision. Critical condition. Internal bleeding. I arrived before they finished stitching him together. He looked smaller in that hospital bed. Smaller than the man who had raised me after our parents died. Smaller than the man who taught me how to ride, how to fall, how to stand back up with dirt on my face and pride intact. His hand felt warm but distant in mine, like holding on to someone already halfway gone. The doctor spoke in careful tones. They never say the worst thing directly. They circle around it, wrapping it in statistics and possibilities. We're monitoring swelling. There may be neurological complications. The next 72 hours are crucial. I nodded as if I understood. As if any of those words could prepare me for silence. Late that evening, a nurse approached me hesitantly. "There's something outside," she said. Her voice carried confusion, not urgency. That was what made me follow her. We stepped through the sliding doors into the damp night air. The rain had slowed to a mist that hovered under the streetlights. And there he was, standing near the hospital entrance. Dusty brown coat darkened by rain. Mane tangled from the wind. Eyes alert but calm. Atlas. My brother's horse. He stood perfectly still, as if he had always belonged there. As if the hospital had been built around him. For a moment I thought I was hallucinating. Sleep deprivation can play tricks on the mind. But Atlas shifted his weight, hooves clicking softly against the pavement, and the sound grounded me in reality. I walked toward him slowly. "Hey boy," I whispered. His ears flicked forward. Recognition. He stepped closer and pressed his head lightly against my shoulder. Warm breath. The smell of hay and earth. Something alive in a place that felt full of waiting endings. "How did you get here?" I murmured. The farm was miles away. Fences. Locked gates. Roads he had never traveled alone. Security guards approached cautiously, unsure whether to shoo him away or call animal control. But Atlas didn't cause trouble. He didn't panic. He simply stood there, patient and watchful, facing the hospital doors like he was guarding something. Like he was waiting. I stayed with him for a long time that night. Rain soaking through my jacket. My hand resting on his neck, feeling the steady strength beneath his skin. He refused to leave. Eventually the staff convinced me to go back inside. They promised to contact someone to retrieve him. I nodded, exhausted, assuming by morning he'd be gone. But he wasn't. The next day Atlas stood in the same spot. And the day after that, people began to notice. Visitors slowed their steps. Nurses whispered. Someone left a bucket of water near the wall. Another person brought apples. Atlas accepted none of it unless I was there. He waited for me. And through him, I felt like my brother was still connected to the world outside that hospital room. Days blurred together. My brother remained unconscious. Machines replaced conversation. I spoke anyway. Told him about the weather, the farm, the way Atlas kept showing up like a silent promise. I didn't tell him about the fear gnawing at my chest. The hospital bills stacking like quiet threats. The insurance representative who kept calling with rehearsed sympathy and subtle warnings about coverage limits. Money has a way of making tragedy feel like an accusation. One afternoon a doctor pulled me aside. "There are complications," he said gently. "If he doesn't regain consciousness soon, we may need to discuss long-term decisions." The hallway felt too narrow to breathe in. I went outside after that conversation and sat beside Atlas on the curb. Traffic hummed. Sirens echoed in the distance. The world moved with cruel indifference. "I don't know what to do," I whispered into his mane. Atlas lowered his head, resting it against my chest with surprising care. His heartbeat thudded slowly, powerful and reassuring. It was ridiculous how much comfort I found in that moment. Ridiculous that a horse could hold more certainty than the sterile reassurances of medicine. But grief doesn't follow logic. On the 5th day, animal control arrived. Complaints. Liability concerns. Safety regulations. They spoke politely but firmly. Atlas couldn't stay. Hospitals weren't built for animals waiting in parking lots. I felt panic rise like heat under my skin. He's not hurting anyone, I argued. Rules don't bend for emotion. As they approached with ropes, Atlas grew restless for the first time. Not aggressive. Just unwilling. He stepped back, eyes searching the entrance as if afraid to lose sight of it. I stood between them. "Give me time," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted. "Please." They hesitated, uncomfortable with the raw desperation in my face. Eventually they granted one more day. One day felt like a borrowed miracle. That night I slept beside Atlas on the concrete. The cold seeped into my bones, but leaving felt impossible. If he was waiting for my brother, then someone should wait with him. Around midnight, a police officer approached. He didn't come to remove Atlas. He came to talk. "There's been an investigation into the accident," he said carefully. "Your brother's truck. There may have been tampering." The words didn't register immediately. Tampering. Not accident. The air felt thinner. "They're saying brake failure," he continued. "But the pattern looks deliberate." My stomach dropped. My brother had been involved in a legal dispute for months. A land conflict with a development company that wanted the farm. Pressure. Threats disguised as negotiations. Offers that felt more like ultimatums. We had brushed it off as corporate intimidation. But lying in that hospital bed, the possibility felt less abstract. Fear turned into something colder. Something sharper. Atlas shifted beside me, restless under the tension in my body. The officer left without conclusions. Investigations take time. Justice moves slowly, especially when money stands in the way. The next morning, Atlas wasn't in his usual spot. Panic surged through me. I searched the parking lot, heart pounding, imagining ropes dragging him away while I slept. But then I saw him. Standing closer to the emergency entrance. Closer than he had ever been allowed. Security guards hovered nearby, strangely hesitant. Atlas wasn't agitated. He simply stared at the sliding doors with intense focus, as if sensing something beyond human perception. I followed his gaze. Inside, chaos stirred. Doctors rushed past. Monitors beeped faster. The fragile quiet of waiting shattered into urgency. I ran upstairs. My brother's room was crowded with medical staff. Voices overlapped. Instructions flew through the air. I was pushed back into the hallway, helpless again. Time stretched. Eventually a doctor stepped out, exhaustion etched into his face. "He had a response," he said. "A brief one. Neurological activity increased unexpectedly. Hope is terrifying when you've already started preparing for loss." I pressed my forehead against the wall, breathing through shaking lungs. Later, when the room emptied, I sat beside my brother again. His eyelids flickered faintly, like someone trying to wake from a deep underwater dream. "You're not alone," I whispered. "Atlas is here." A single tear slid from the corner of his eye. Days passed. Small signs accumulated. Fingers twitching. Heart rhythm stabilizing. Nothing dramatic enough to celebrate, but enough to keep despair from swallowing me whole. Meanwhile, Atlas became a quiet legend outside the hospital. News spread. Strangers visited just to see him. Some cried without knowing why. Others stood silently, absorbing the strange comfort of unwavering loyalty. But attention also brought pressure. The development company's representatives began appearing more frequently. Polite smiles. Concerned inquiries. Subtle suggestions about selling the farm to reduce stress during recovery. Their timing felt like a shadow creeping across sunlight. One evening, I noticed Atlas behaving differently. Agitated. Pacing in tight circles. Ears pinned. Attention I had never seen in him before. A black SUV idled across the street. I felt the connection instantly, even without proof. Atlas stepped forward, blocking my path toward the vehicle as if trying to warn me. His body formed a barrier, protective and deliberate. The SUV drove away moments later. Fear settled deeper. The investigation remained quiet, but my instincts screamed that the accident wasn't random. That recovery itself might be inconvenient for someone. On the 12th day, my brother finally opened his eyes. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough. The room felt brighter even under fluorescent lights. The air warmer. My chest cracked open with relief so intense it hurt. He couldn't speak. Tubes and weakness stole his voice. But his gaze searched the room until it found me. And then, with slow effort, he moved his hand, mimicking the motion of holding reins. "Atlas," I said softly. His eyes closed in quiet confirmation. Later that night, I brought a photo of Atlas to his bedside. His breathing steadied as he stared at it, as if the image anchored him to reality more effectively than medication. Recovery was fragile. Progress uneven. But consciousness changed everything. And with consciousness came memory. Weeks later, when he could finally whisper, his first coherent sentence shattered whatever remained of my denial. "They cut the brakes," he said. His voice trembled with effort, but certainty burned behind his eyes. He remembered the moment before impact. The brake pedal collapsing. The realization that someone had turned machinery into a weapon. The investigation accelerated after that. Evidence surfaced. Patterns emerged. Financial motives uncovered beneath layers of legal maneuvering. But what ultimately pushed everything into undeniable truth wasn't paperwork. It was Atlas. A security camera captured